From colonies to powerhouses, the Sahel's rebellion under Traoré's command. The world wasn't watching when the first spark lit the Sahel. It began quietly. Whispers from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, nations long dismissed as unstable, or underdeveloped, began to talk, to dream, and then to act. In the heart of the Sahara, a rebellion wasn't waged with missiles or tanks. It was fought with sovereignty, courage, and an unbreakable will to be free. And at the center of it stood a man, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young, fiery leader who turned Burkina Faso from a forgotten colony into a symbol of defiance. But this wasn't just his story. This was the story of an entire region. The Sahel, finally refusing to bow. The ghosts of empire. For over a century, the Sahel was the French Empire's lifeline. A land of endless extraction. Gold, uranium, cotton, oil, all flowed north to Europe, while the people of the Sahel were left with crumbs. Even after independence, Paris never really left. It simply changed uniforms. The CFA franc, created in 1945, locked 14 African nations into a currency controlled by France's central bank. French troops maintained security partnerships. French companies kept mining contracts. French diplomacy dictated economic policy. It was colonialism rebranded, and the Sahel felt its weight heavier than ever. Enter the new generation. Then came a new generation. Impatient, angry, and unafraid. In 2022, Burkina Faso's military rose up amid deep frustration. Terrorism ravaged the countryside. Poverty deepened, and the people were done waiting for promises that never came. When Ibrahim Traoré, a 34-year-old officer, took power, few outside the region even knew his name. But within weeks, his fiery speeches, Pan-African defiance, and call for unity electrified the continent. He spoke not as a general, but as a son of Africa. We refuse to be slaves of the past. We are the children of Africa, and Africa shall stand again. The world didn't take him seriously. At first, they called him young, inexperienced, radical, but Traoré had something far more dangerous than experience. He had conviction. The Sahel Alliance is born. In 2023, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger did the unthinkable. They formed a new regional bloc, the Alliance of Sahel States. OAS. Their goal? Mutual defense, joint sovereignty, and economic independence. Each had overthrown pro-French governments. Each had expelled foreign troops. Each was ready to rewrite the rules. They rejected the French military presence, denounced the CFA franc, and turned instead toward Russia, China, Turkey, and the African continent itself for cooperation. For the first time since the colonial era, the Sahel was no longer dictated to. It was dictating its own future. And that sent shockwaves through Western capitals. France's fall from grace. For decades, France considered the Sahel its backyard. Operation Barkhane, its flagship counterterrorism mission, stationed thousands of troops across Mali, Niger, Chad, and Burkina Faso. But those troops became symbols of occupation, not protection, as civilians and soldiers died in rising jihadist attacks. Many Sahelians asked, if France has been here for 10 years, why are the terrorists stronger than ever? The answer became clear. Stability wasn't the goal. Control was. By 2024, one after another, the Sahelian states demanded French troops withdraw. Mali was first. Burkina Faso followed. Then Niger. The French military, humiliated, was forced to pack up and leave. A retreat unseen since the Algerian War. And in the streets of Ouagadougou and Bamako, people danced. Flags changed. Statues fell, and in their place rose new banners of independence, of unity, of pride. The West strikes back, but empires don't disappear quietly. France, the EU, and the United States launched media offensives. Western outlets labeled the new Sahel leaders as authoritarians, anti-democratic, and Russian proxies. Economic sanctions followed. Aid was frozen. Western diplomats warned of instability. But the Sahel was undeterred. Traoré and his allies saw through the game. The same nations that plundered Africa for centuries were now lecturing it on democracy. They talk of democracy, Traoré said, but their democracy is the freedom to exploit. Ours is the freedom to exist. In response, the OES began talks on a shared currency, joint military command, and a unified industrial policy. Steps that could shatter the last remnants of neo-colonial control. What was once a scattered rebellion had become a coordinated revolution. The resource war. Behind the political drama lies the real story. Resources. The Sahel holds enormous untapped wealth. Gold in Burkina Faso. Uranium in Niger. Oil and gas reserves in Chad and Mali. For decades, Western corporations controlled extraction, paying pennies while exporting billions. But now, contracts are being reviewed. National companies are being formed. Deals are being struck with Russia, China, and fellow African states. On African terms, this is what truly terrifies Paris and Washington. Not the coups, not the rhetoric, but the possibility that Africa could finally profit from its own resources. Global repercussions. The Sahel Rebellion isn't just a regional event. It's a signal flare to the entire global South. Across Africa, Latin America, and Asia, nations are watching as small, poor, landlocked countries stand up to centuries of dominance. The West calls it instability. The global South calls it self-determination. And as the Sahel tightens its alliance, its influence spreads. From Guinea to Central African Republic, from Togo to Sudan, one by one, African nations are reevaluating their ties to the West, demanding fairer terms, and asserting their sovereignty. The world orders, built on Africa's submission, is trembling. Traoré's gamble. But revolutions come with a price. Burkina Faso faces insurgent attacks, economic strain, and diplomatic isolation. Mali continues to fight militants across vast deserts. Niger's uranium exports have plummeted since its rupture with France. The Sahel's rebellion has inspired millions, but it also risks being crushed by global pressure. That's the paradox Traoré faces. How to turn independence into development, and idealism into survival. He has called for Pan-African solidarity, resource nationalization, and military unities. Yet critics argue he is consolidating power and silencing dissent. But in his mind, this isn't tyranny. It is necessity. We are in a war for existence. He said, a soft voice will not save us. Whether he is remembered as a liberator or a strongman will depend on what comes next. The turning point. As 2025 unfolds, the Sahel stands at a crossroads. France's influence has collapsed, but the void it left is perilous. The region must now prove it can govern itself, not as a pawn in global power games, but as a unified bloc that delivers security, prosperity, and dignity. The OES is planning joint energy projects, border protection forces, and an economic council aimed at breaking dependence on Western loans. It's a monumental challenge, but the symbolism is powerful. For the first time in modern history, Africa's poorest region is leading a conversation about Africa's future. And the world is finally paying attention. The new frontline of global politics. The Sahel's rebellion isn't just a local uprising. It's the frontline of a new Cold War.